Welcome everyone to the Farmington Scoop. I'm your host, Urge Abaye, and I'm excited to dive into a topic that's become a significant part of our daily lives, technology addiction. I'm joined today by two fantastic guests, my dear friend Aisha Vong and the esteemed Mrs. Lund. Our mission for today is to explore the ways technology addiction is impacting not just students, but teachers as well, and discuss strategies to tackle this pressing issue head on right here at Farmington High. To kick things off, let's establish a clear definition of technology addiction. According to the addiction psychiatrist James Shearer, technology addiction is characterized by excessive use of technology that leads to problems and distress. This can manifest in ways we might all recognize, like those nights when we find ourselves scrolling endlessly only to realize it's 4 a.m. and we've only had 4 hours of sleep. Or the first thing we do each morning is reach for our phones to check social media. Moreover, Leif Sigerson, a social psychologist, highlights a fascinating aspect of this addiction, known as phantom signals. The sensation of hearing notification sounds when, in fact, our devices are silent. I can't be the only one who's pulled out my phone thinking I felt a buzz, only to see no new notifications glaring back at me. As young individuals with developing brains, today's students may be particularly vulnerable to technology addiction. Sharon notes that for adolescents, this can lead to setbacks in cognitive, emotional, and even motor development. It's no wonder that Farmington has implemented a phone ban. The reality of students being compulsively tethered to their devices has become so prevalent that the rule now stands: 3 strikes and you're out. To help unpack this, I'm thrilled to have Aisha Vong here with us today. Hi Aisha, thanks for joining. Let's dive deeper into your experience as a student, Aisha. As an active social media user, how do you perceive the compulsion to use technology in your own life? And have you noticed it among your peers, especially in the classroom?
Hello, thank you for having me. And as an active social media user, I feel compulsed to use technology because I have FOMO and I have the fear of missing out. So I like to see what people are posting. I also like to post myself. And I use technology basically every day in my life. And I have noticed it among my peers also. Not only just like peers in the classrooms, I also see it in like workplaces or even out all around the world. But for myself, I feel as if social media impacted my life in a both positive and negative way. I like posting just because it's fun to like show others what I'm doing, but I also feel as like everything has to be perfect before I post, and just like also when I use it, I feel compulsed to like scroll and like I'm not really thinking what I'm watching, but I just scroll because it's like interesting.
That's actually really interesting, Aisha, the point you make about being compulsed to scroll, even though you're not.
I refer to it as doom scrolling. It usually happens at night. I'm usually on TikTok or Instagram, mostly TikTok. Before bed, I'm just laying down, winding down, and I just scroll until I get tired. I'm not like, I can't remember like the past 2 videos I'd watch, but I just keep on scrolling because it's interesting. It's keeping me sucked in because like there's a video right after another and it just never ends.
It's almost fascinating to hear how pervasive this compulsion can be. Aisha, according to Sigerson, excessive internet use has surged significantly over the past decade. Have you witnessed any particular shifts in technologies over the years?
Yeah, I've noticed a major shift in technology. Ever since like elementary school, we've always had like iPads, and we would do work on iPads, and like middle school, even now until high school, we've always had iPads. And I remember in like middle school, we'd have iPads and we would just like download apps, and we could, like most like students would just play games instead of doing their work. And that's why I think it's either this year or last year they have implemented like a ban on the App Store, which is understandable because like students weren't doing their work. But yeah, major shifts. So some kids would just they wouldn't do their work, just play games. And not even in the classroom, in the like real world, basically everyone and their moms have technology or like phones, and everyone's just like scrolling or just using it in some sort of way.
Those changes certainly reflect a larger trend, don't they? Now, when it comes to the classroom specifically, what do you think are some of the downsides of technology use, especially during instruction?
The downsides of the technology during instructions in the classroom is definitely kids playing games on their iPads And not only that, I sometimes notice like they have their iPads up to look like they're doing the work, but then they hide their phone behind it. And it affects the learning because they're not paying attention to the instructions or what the teacher is saying, because maybe they can't sit still, or they just have FOMO and they don't want to like miss out what's going on their phone, but they initially just miss what the teacher is teaching.
So, given all these drawbacks, why do you think students still gravitate towards technology use, even if it can be a distract?
I think students still gravitate towards technology in class because they're just bored, they don't want to listen, or they feel like they feel like they can multitask. But like there's like a study where you actually can't multitask, but they think that if they're on their phone, they could still just like listen and get the information.
That's a really good point, Aisha. It underscores the challenges we face as a community. Do you believe the new phone policy has had a significant effect on curbing technology use at Farmington?
Honestly, for some classes, more teachers are strict on the technology ban, but some teachers honestly don't care anymore, and they'll let the students on their phone, and they're not really calling out students if they're on their phones. So it honestly depends on the teacher and how they like take the technology ban into effect. But for my classes, I don't think that the technology ban is really like working, unless like if the teacher, like in my pre-calc class, I don't see anyone on their phones during notes until after like they finish their work. But yeah, honestly, it depends on the teacher and how they want to like punish or like call the kids out who uses their phones. Overall, I think it's a good attempt, but most students won't listen unless the teacher puts in the work to help students stop using their phones.
As we look for solutions, it's clear that education is essential. Research by Suleiman Turkoglu emphasizes the need to raise awareness among parents about the dangers of technology dependency and to teach students mindful technology usage while they're still in school. So, Aisha, based on these observations, what steps do you think we can take at Farmington to address the issue of technology addiction effectively?
Yeah, I don't think the ban is honestly working because some students don't listen. But a way I think that might be better than the ban is like you can encourage students to finish their work, and then after, if they finish their work, you can give them some phone privileges, and also you can give them like some like presentations, or you can have like some like a speaker, and someone could educate them about the effects of technology addiction.
Great thoughts, Aisha. Now, to get another perspective on addressing technology addiction at Farmington, I'd like to welcome Mrs. Lund, our esteemed AP Psychology teacher. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Lund. To start, how long have you been teaching at Farmington?
This will be my 27th year teaching in Farmington.
And over your time here, how have you seen technology use evolve in your classrooms?
So technology has definitely, because I have been teaching for so many years, really transformed how I teach and how the classroom dynamics is run. I would say one of the main things that I remember being a big change in my classroom was the introduction of YouTube. And I really found that the concepts that I was teaching were able to come to life through examples that I could give in, real life situations for the first time. Prior to YouTube, I was just really telling stories, which I still do. But typically what I do is I will explain a concept, tell a story, and then when appropriate, I'd be able to pull up a YouTube video and show an example of it. And I just think for learners, it was helpful to hear examples and then be able to see it apply in real life. And then the next major change I would definitely say was the iPads. And the iPads allowed for us to be able to have students kind of take their learning to the next level, and they were able to utilize technology in a way that they could demonstrate their learning in a variety of different ways. With that has come some frustrations and some setbacks, but I do think overall Farmington has been pretty progressive in how we approach learning and in the use of technology. And I will say One of the main things that I love about technology and the iPad use are my review games. And I know before technology, my students would just be studying on their own, looking at their notes, and now they can use their iPads to study Quizlet, which has been really helpful because my course is very vocab based. So they have this interactive game that they can use to review. And then in class, before we take quizzes and tests, I've got a lot of platforms that I like to use. Kahoot's my favorite, but there's Gimkits and there's Bookits that allow for them to also review the material. So that's been really helpful. And now probably most recently with my AP psychology class is they are converting to digital testing. This is the first time that it's not paper and pencil. So all students are required to use, in our school, an iPad with a wireless keyboard to basically just input their answers.
This school year, Farmington implemented a new phone policy to help manage phone use. How have you seen this policy impact the technology use in your classroom?
You know, cell phones have always been a struggle and a distraction for students. That really has been the case ever since smartphones became available to students. And I still, even with the cell phone policy, find that students that are really addicted to their cell phones are still using them. And I know a lot of that is on me because sometimes I get so into teaching the content that I'm really not paying attention if students are using them or not. They're pretty obvious about sometimes hiding it behind their iPad. So they'll have their iPad just like sitting up on their desk and they will have it behind them, or they'll just be right blatant in front of me using it. And this may not be the best approach, and it may not be something administration would really support, but I truly have kind of taken the approach that, you know, my classes are primarily seniors. I have a few juniors that are kind of sprinkled in, but I really have come to the conclusion that they're really only hurting themselves. I can talk about it. I can explain how, you know, we even talk about a concept of selective attention and how when you multitask, it does come at a cost. And we talk about effortful processing versus surface and shallow processing. And with cell phone use, the students that are, you know, on other, even with the iPads, if they're on games or they're on their phones, they're just not learning at the same level as someone who's fully present and is not having their phone or their game on their iPad as a distraction. So I do think it has overall improved. Like I will say, I think there are fewer students that use their cell phone in my classroom, but it is still an issue. So I guess that's my answer to that part of the question.
So, as a seasoned educator, what strategies do you think are most effective in mitigating technology use during class?
I have just tried to have the honest conversation with students about them being a distraction and how it does impact their learning in a way in which they're not engaging, they're not fully present, they're not able to process it as deeply. I've noticed that those who have chosen to put them away really have benefited from that. And I do think that it has just been an overall general awareness piece for students that are constantly having to be reminded to put them away. But I do think it is just kind of a lifelong lesson that you are going to have natural consequences. Your grades will suffer. You may not do as well. And for my class, the AP exam at the end of the year is really kind of the goal that they're shooting for and passing that to get college credit. So I guess there are definitely benefits to having the policy, but it's still not perfect. It's kind of a work in progress.
Thank you so much for your insight, Mrs. Lund. And I thank both of you guys for coming on to Farmington Scoop and giving me your opinions on what it's like to be a student when it comes to technology addiction and navigating that in your daily life. And also as a facilitator of the education, Mrs. Lund, it's been very, very helpful. And I hope for our listeners that this can be a good example of what different solutions to technology addiction can be. This is your host, Rike, checking out.
The world ain't the same no more. Take your life to next level or remain no more. Take your life to next level or remain no more. Word up, word up. Well, I'm colliding with